Well, as best I remember, and I might advise anybody watching this that I am old and my memory is very poor, and so take anything I say with several grains of salt. I believe I came here in the summer of 1960, and that, of course, was a long, long time ago. Harry Crawford was the director of LSSC, yeah, I had it wrong there, was the director of Michigan Mining and Technology, Sioux Branch. I think that's the way it was. And the place was a mess. I was horrified when I looked at the campus first time I came here, and it took Kenneth Schuldeis some years later basically to fix the campus up so that it looked much, much better.
So what were the kinds of messes that you saw?
Oh, simply that overgrown weeds and buildings that looked as if they were about to fall down. I may be exaggerating this a bit. The buildings actually were of a pretty solid brick structure, but it just didn't look like a college campus. It needed cleaning up. And very few women on the campus. I remember I once, for the first time in my life, was able to see, and this of course wintertime, an Arctic owl, one of these huge things, you know, Arctic, is that the proper name for it? And women were about as scarce on the campus as Arctic owls at that time. It's amusing to note that in 1962, which was only shortly after I came, there were 6.5 times as many men as women on the campus. That ratio gradually changed over the years, so that today the percentage is 52% men and 48% women. To the best of my knowledge, there are more women than men in the United States attending college today, which gives me hope for equality for women as the time goes along. They sure don't have it yet, but I'm working. That's one of the main things that I do in my life, is to try to help women achieve equality in job opportunity and in politics and things like that. They don't have it today.
What about the classroom situation when you went into it?
Well, we did have classrooms, of course. Nothing special. They were made over, in a sense, from the rooms which the military had before. In other words, they were not specifically designed to be classrooms, but we did have a table for the desk for the professor and chairs and all for the students. Rather crude, rather elementary, but it was there all right.
Now, you played a role in developing the English aspect of the...
Well, actually, as best I remember, I came as the chairman for humanities and social services, social studies, which included at the time the band and languages. So when I came, I happened to be the only PhD at the college at that time. I think there had been a very few, possibly one or two, before I came, but I was in charge of that department and helped with the development then of the curriculum of staffing, hiring and firing and so on, that kind of thing, in that particular department. That was, of course, again under Professor Harry Crawford, who was the director at that time. Classes, as I remember them, were not too large. I myself taught, for the most part, freshman English. Well, it may have had a different title at that time, and our classes were usually around 25 to 30, and many of the language classes were quite small. We'd take whoever wanted to take them, but there weren't very many students in that. Social studies, as I remember it, although I did not have the social studies classes myself, some of them were quite large. We had French, and Spanish and German, and somewhere in there we had Russian. They had Russian at least for a time with Professor George Sozak, but I don't remember what the years were there. And when I came, I think we had French and Spanish, and I think that was all. But again, I'm not accurate.
Now, you had the opportunity to teach the students there who were probably primarily veterans in the beginning?
There were some veterans, but of course now, when I came in 1960, this is about 14 years after the college opened, and the veterans largely had come and gone before I went there, before I came. So there were some veterans, but it was by no means, they were by no means the larger part of the enrollment. Was passive about politics, actually, until about the time I retired from the college, at which time I became a very strong political activist, fighting for women's rights and that kind of thing. But then I remember, of course, about Kennedy. I do remember when Kennedy was assassinated. When the news came in the afternoon, as best I remember, about 1:30 or something, again, time. But in any case, the news had just come out about Kennedy's death, and we had just a short meeting, and I was just about to cry at that time, and the kids were all affected also. Very sad occasion for America. But as to talking about politics and so on during the 1960s, well, no, not very much.
There wasn't much going on politically at the campus here?
No, I guess I probably shouldn't say it in that way, because I'm sure that other people may have been interested, but it just means that for myself personally, I was not too interested in politics at that time, and therefore I did not pay very much attention.
I had heard somewhere that Schuldeis had put up those lights.
Yes.
Riot control lights, almost. I mean, they're huge lights for a
Yes.
campus.
Yes.
Because he wanted the security, because he was afraid there might be unrest because other college campuses were...
Now, to the best of my feeble recollection, it's the first time I've heard that explanation of why those tall lights were put up. The erection of the lights, as best I remember, was strictly Dr. Schuldeis's idea, and he was a man of ideas, and he carried them out. I remember his telling me once, I'm not going to run this campus by consensus. And he didn't. So I assure you, I was not consulted about those lights. I thought that they were intended to be a kind of mark of distinction for the college. These were unusual, and intended, of course, also to illuminate, to give light, which would, of course, add to security, girls on the campus, anybody on the campus, and that was my own thought about it. I did not think that he was afraid of there being riots or anything like that, as I say. No, I hadn't heard that one before. Well, I was very much in favor of the college. I'd had a varied career before coming to Michigan Technological University, Sioux Branch. I had attended, taught in Pennsylvania at the Pennsylvania State College, so I was somewhat familiar with Pennsylvania. When Dr. Arbuckle and his wife came here, wife and I had taught in a number of places, and my wife and I had moved, an unbelievable number of times. So I had ideas about teaching and what I wanted to do and so on, and this was an opportunity for me to come, and I was very happy to come here. I liked Mr. Crawford, and he and I, on the whole, got along, I thought, pretty well. Of course, he's long been gone now, as both of you know. And enjoyed my teaching and tried to improve teaching. I might mention an idea, and I don't know just when this came about or when I was doing this, But in any case, it seemed to me as department chairman that it would be highly advisable if somebody would help the students, let the faculty know how they were reacting to the faculty. In other words, how good a teacher are you? If you have a class in English or a class in Spanish or whatever, what do your students think about you? And so I did develop a questionnaire which I would use in all of my own classes, but asking the students to grade, as it were, grade every teacher that they had, and then those results would be added up and so on. And I still think today that this would be an excellent idea. I would recommend it for LSSU today. I would recommend it for the schools in the state of Michigan. That's surely at the college level, and I think it would hold true also at the high school level, possibly not at grade school. I'm not so sure about that. I haven't done much grade school teaching at all in my life. But at the high school and college level, if some authority, whether it's the school superintendent or in my case the department chairman, somebody would have students grade their teachers, say for instance from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, and grade them on such things as knowledge of the subject and their use of aids, various kinds, and availability, and so on, overall teaching ability, and then perhaps chosen few specific attributes of teaching, and have that available to the teacher after it's been codified, and somebody also then to help the teachers. And this I find lacking, as far as I know, lacking at LSSU at the present time. As far as I know, and I just checked with Jim Naback, who's in the high school business department, just checked with him about it. Not true in the high school, I wish it were. They had somebody who then could come and visit with the teachers and help them improve their teaching. I think that'd be a tremendous asset. Also, if you have somebody who's way down time after time, way below normal, and who can't or won't improve his or her teaching, why, that ought to be a possible way to say, well, we're sorry, but we no longer need you, want you in our system. But as I say, I don't remember the specific years for that. I did do that, though, for years, and I have a great deal of faith in it. It was consistent. It worked. Certain people would be at the high rank. For instance, I can mention a name here, Margaret Howe, who in my opinion was one of the early women to help the college. I'll just say college from here on. Margaret Howe placed consistently high on those records. Mike Flynn, a man, placed consistently high. I won't mention the ones who placed consistently low. Yes, I've been a teacher, as I see it, of communication skills, which is a way of touching upon, a way of describing an English teacher, but I'm trying to teach thinking as basic to the communication process, thinking, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I tried to get all of those in to some extent, although normally my emphasis, I guess what I was really being paid to do most of the time, was to help with writing skills, have the students write, and then I'd go over them and so on, read some of them to the class, things like that, have the students come in and go over the comments that I'd put on their papers, and also give them a chance to comment back at me.
That's rare.
Yes. Well, I don't, yes, I suppose it's rare, at least that particular approach. I taught communication skills at Michigan State before I went out to South Dakota, and then from Michigan State to South Dakota to the college here. And at Michigan State, under Paul Bagwell, and this many years ago, over a third of a century ago, we had this communication skills approach where we were expected to teach all 5 of those. It's a good system, really. It's a good system for, especially now. For example, time and time again, I would mention the importance of listening to directions. If your teacher is explaining what you're to do for a paper, for example. You better have your knowledge in your head before you start in on writing that paper. And so very important in life itself, time and time again. Your spouse won't like it if you've been asked to do 3 things and you forget 2 of them. In fact, might not like it if you forgot 1. Well, I do remember being burned out of the building that I was located in at the time. Fire there, I think that was called North Hall at the time, if I recall. I'm not sure whether that was the name or not. But in any case, there was a fire in the building, and my own office was damaged somewhat more by water, not by fire. They must have put a lot of water in on that, and so that building ultimately, as best I remember, came down, and we have now the Crawford Hall of Science there. That was an important new building for me, which I do remember, but I don't remember the dates. Sports. Let's see. As best I remember, we had the Hornets basketball team, and we did not have and have never had football. And was there hockey at that time? If there was hockey, I've forgotten about it, which I'm sure Bud Cooper would want to shoot me for. But they could have had hockey, I presume, down at the Puller Stadium. At that time, we did not have any hockey rink, such as, of course, we do have now. But mostly, as I recall it, basketball. No women's sports. Heavens, weren't enough women around to get up a team of anything at the beginning when I was here. And that, of course, did come in later. We do have excellent women's sports now. Well, I might just mention, of possible interest to your audience, that my wife was very much interested in human relationships between the peoples of different countries. And she took a very active part in helping to found the people-to-people movement. She was in it very early. Walter Materna was in it very early. Jim Robertson, as best I recall, the mayor of the city at that time, or if not mayor then, why he had been mayor in and out, Jim Robertson was very much interested. And so more because she was interested than because I was interested, why I did take part in that also. My wife loved to travel, and I kind of tagged along with her, but she just plain wore me out. She would travel 16 hours a day, and I was never good for more than about 8. She went to Europe. I did not accompany her there with a people-to-people group. Traveled in England and in Italy, Germany, and some of the other countries, which I don't remember at the time. She also had a trip to Japan, and this is a little doll of a Japanese girl. She is, as I understand it, supposed to be both praying and singing at the same time. And that was characteristic. I've had this in on one of the few things that I claimed from her return, and had been on my bedroom dresser for a number of years. But as I say, she was much interested in that, and I tagged along with her. Of course, I am interested in, I'm trying at the present time, and have been trying for years, trying to understand and write about international, national, state, and local affairs. I'm a chronic writer of letters to editors now, and part of that goes back to, I'm sure, back to my wife's great interest in foreign peoples. Incidentally, people have loved her, did love her, and have loved her all her life. She was a loving, caring person. I was the person to bring home the bacon. She was the person who made the home and took care of the children and, in a sense, performed the duties and responsibilities one usually associates with women. But that's the way we were, and she was very fond of other peoples, and other peoples loved her too.